What's up, guys? Welcome back to the WSU Democrats podcast. I am Ethan Bishop, the president of the organization, and I am a philosophy major.
My name is Vaughn, and I'm a cybersecurity major.
So today we're going to be talking about Utah's new redistricting map, which they've selected Map C, the federal government shutdown, Trump sending troops to Chicago and Portland, plus any topics that we also would like to discuss. To start off, Utah redistricting. Earlier this week, Utah's Republican-led legislature passed a new congressional map, Map C, in a special session to comply with a court order that invalidated the 2021 map. Map C splits parts of Salt Lake City east and west and also splits some cities and counties like Davis, North Salt Lake, Pleasant Grove to draw district lines. Republicans claim Map C balances urban and rural interests, but critics say it's engineered to protect GOP dominance even while giving Democrats a slightly more competitive shot in one district. The map still needs judicial approval. A judge, Judge Deanna Gibson, will review whether Map C or one of the maps proposed by plaintiffs will be used. Also, the legislature passed a law restricting what metrics judges can use to evaluate gerrymandering. Some argue this is meant to weaken the legal protections against partisan gerrymandering. So, of course, they chose the most heavily right-wing district, the one that will entrench their power the most. And, you know, it's absolutely not surprising that they would do this. I don't know exactly what the partisan lean of each district would be, but how they were talking about how, we can never give, Utah two, possibly Democratic congressional districts. And what really pisses me off about this is that, like in one of the posts that I think the Utah Republicans posted when they were talking about how it could be a map where you get possibly two Democratic congressmen in there, he said that less than 14% of Utahns are registered Democrats. And it's like, well, that's rich that you'd use that number and not the percentage we get statewide, which is it's clearly approaching 40. Biden almost got 40% in the state. Kamala Harris, even though in many states, her compared to Biden in 2020, she got way less percentage of the vote. Here, she did basically the same as Biden. So we're basically almost there, cracking 40% of the vote. They always talk about how, California is not such a blue state. They have 40% goes to Republicans. Well, it's like, yeah, 40% of Utah goes to Democrats. And then once you have an independent in there who can appeal to even more people, like Evan McMullen, he only lost by 10 points. When you look at a state like Virginia, Biden only won that by 10 points. Only like around a year later, they elected a Republican governor. So we're really not as red as they want you to think. They just want you to think, we're so red, we can never elect, anyone who's not a Republican. No, we could clearly elect an independent. And I think if we keep building this momentum, we definitely could elect a Democrat. I just think that the warning signs are there for the GOP, and they do not want a competitive map. But yeah, what do you think?
I mean, do you think so? If they went through with this redistricting plan, do you know how the seats would change in Congress?
So it would most likely stay for Republican congressmen. I think one district will become slightly less Republican. So in like a crazy blue wave year, maybe they could win, but honestly, probably not. Even if a Republican wins by a slightly narrower margin than they might think. So with that, they think that would. With some of the other maps, you could get up to two Democrats in there with like a swing district or even like a Trump plus 7 district. Because you see in these special elections, like Trump plus 7 districts, then, a Democrat could win that by like 7. And, it could go back and forth and that sort of thing. So yeah, it wouldn't really disrupt the balance of power. It would just make it a little bit have to make Republicans work a tiny bit harder.
So why would they? So who proposed the plan? Was it
this map?
Yeah, was it the GOP?
This is the one that they preferred, and they put on their website because you could do public comments to the legislature, and they promoted Map C because it was the most partisanly gerrymandered.
With Texas, the plan that went through there and that actually passed, that was gerrymandering because they got more Republican seats.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if, I assume that was the same for Utah, but if they're not getting any more seats.
Yeah, so they're not getting any more seats because they wouldn't really be able to squeeze out any more because they already have all 4. This is a little bit different from the Texas scenario where Trump literally called Greg Abbott and he ordered him to draw 5 new districts. This comes from the legislature basically telling the Utah Supreme Court telling the legislature, you can't just disregard Prop 4, which was passed by the Utah voters in 2018 to make a fair, independent redistricting committee. You can't just ignore that and put your own partisan maps. So we need new maps. So new maps were proposed, and Map C is what they selected. So they were like, okay, well, it's gerrymandered, so we're going to have a map that's not gerrymandered. So I guess it probably slightly is less gerrymandered because, like I said, it's less conservative than it was. That still doesn't make it not gerrymandered. And I was also watching this one YouTuber called Let's Talk Elections, and he was talking about how Republicans doing this, if they push Map C and they still try to just gerrymander all hell they can, then a judge might say, fuck it, I'm going to order you to draw 2 Democratic congressional maps, or basically 2 districts that Democrats could get, because Republicans just again and again refuse to abide by what the judge is saying. So then they might just force them, no, you literally have to. And that wouldn't even be the most unfair thing. I mean, 40 to 60 in a growing Democratic population, and it's not like they would be safe blue districts. So even if you want to be super fair to the Republicans, what would probably happen, and this did happen within 2018, I believe it was the 4th district. In 2018, a Mormon Democrat won there. He beat Mia Love, the incumbent. She was a black woman Republican in that seat, and she lost. And then Ben McAdams won, who is the Democrat, and then he lost in 2020, which just because it's the presidential year and people were voting for Trump and that sort of thing. And then he lost to Burgess Owens, who's now in the House in a safe district now. So it's not like we would get locked in Democratic seats unless Republicans just keep on doing bad, or a Democrat just knows how to win there again and again and again, which they're also scared of, because this isn't the first time they've done this. There's a guy named Jim Matheson who, and I believe his father used to be governor of Utah, and this was way back in the 2000s, but they had tried to gerrymander him out of his seat several times. And even in 2012, when Mitt Romney was running for president and he was Mormon and the Republicans here loved him and all that stuff, he still won his congressional race in a gerrymandered district. So they know that if a Democrat finds a way to win here, they can. And I just think it's just so irritating when I hear people discredit like the Democratic momentum we have here in Utah. Like, they didn't
It's
go
growing,
to
yeah.
exactly like the AOC and Bernie rally I went to with all those people there just chanting that energy. And if we could get someone like AOC like as our candidate for president, I'm not necessarily endorsing any particular person, but like that would be crazy. And I just think we have so much potential here in Utah, and just exposing Republicans, I think that we can turn the tide in a really good way. But
Yeah, I agree.
should redistricting reform, like independent commissions, be required in Utah? What would that look like? So I kind of wanted to add that in there because nowadays, like with Trump calling Greg Abbott and wanting him to, draw 5 more congressional districts and that sort of thing. Now we have Gavin Newsom and them wanting to draw new districts to kind of offset that and that kind of thing. Um, but that kind of brings into question, should Democrats and Democratic governors be doing this, or should we just all be going through independent redistricting committees just from us, even if it is just in a blue state, because that's just what's more fair. But I don't think that makes a lot of sense, because then you have the Republicans gerrymandering their states. So then it's overall more gerrymandered to the Republicans because of what they did. So I'm just curious. I mean, do you think it's the right scenario what Gavin Newsom is doing? Because like I said, I do want to say that it is right what he's doing, but then again, think about that 40% of Republicans in California. If they get like 5 or even all of their seats taken away, that's kind of jarring to think about. But that's basically what's happened to us in Utah. So it basically just be evening the scores. But it is kind of a dangerous outcome if you have Republicans and Democrats doing that, because then eventually you'll just have all Republicans in Republican states, all Democrats, Democrat states, and the partisanship will be even more entrenched. But I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, if someone does something wrong, does that automatically just give you the right to do the same thing? And I think in this case it does. When you have Texas getting more seats and doing it the unfair way. And, everyone called it out for what it was, which is gerrymandering. And they tried to, all the state's congressmen and women, they fled the state, to Illinois and to try and postpone it. In the end, it did go through. So, we tried to play the fair way, but I think Gavin Newsom and other blue states should do the same thing and just show them that, if you don't play by the rules, then we're going to do the same thing, and then you're just not going to get what you want. Because I think, like you're right, that could lead to, just like all blue and all red states, which is not good. But I think once we get through with this administration, which we are only a fraction of the way through, unfortunately, it'll even itself out in the future. But in the meantime, I think I think the Trump administration in general has too much power as it is. So giving them more, I think we need to avoid that at all costs.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important the Democrats win the midterms. I want to be so focused on, here in Utah, even with it being so Republican, and even if we do get a district, there's a good chance that District 1 that we currently reside in, there's a good chance that'll just stay Republican because they'll just include parts of Logan, Ogden, and then it just kind of goes up and that sort of thing, and they don't really go southward into Salt Lake. Unfortunately, ideally, I'd think that there would be a map that somehow connects Ogden and Salt Lake, because Ogden Democrats win in Ogden. It's just when it's gerrymandered and all split up. That's why Republicans win and get on the city council and all that kind of thing. But yeah, if we don't really have anything else to say about that, I kind of wanted to talk about the government shutdown a little more. We talked about this last time, but it's a very pressing issue. So right now, the federal government is in a shutdown because Congress failed to pass funding bills before the new fiscal period began. House Republicans had proposed a clean continuing resolution to fund the government through November 21st at current spending levels, but it excluded certain health care subsidies, which Democrats have insisted must be part of any agreement. Democrats are demanding that the deal include permanent or longer-term extensions of the Affordable Care Act, ACA premium tax credits, restore Medicaid funding cuts, and reverse parts of the Rescissions Act of 2025 that cut fundings from programs like public broadcasting. Republicans argue that reopening the government first is necessary, and that adding policy riders like healthcare demands complicates negotiations. They've also warned of layoffs and targeted cuts if the shutdown continues. A big flashpoint now is whether furloughed federal employees will receive back pay when the government reopens. The White House has circulated a memo suggesting it's not guaranteed in all cases, which breaks precedent in current interpretations of the law. So, what are the risks of insisting on policy demands like healthcare in the same package as must-pass funding bills? Does that increase leverage or make shutdowns more likely? Because when you think about it, you might think, yeah, we want to protect healthcare and that sort of thing. But and I could definitely see someone like Blake Moore, who represents us right now, how he spins it, and he's like, yeah, they just want to add healthcare in there. That's not even what we're talking about. We just want to fund the government. And then afterwards, we could talk about healthcare. Yeah, because Republicans love talking about healthcare when it's not trying to literally destroy the Affordable Care Act, which they brazenly want to do, and they're brazenly getting some of their way, letting some of the Affordable Care Act subsidies expire. So
yeah, we can all see how that goes when they pass it and say, "Oh, we'll worry about your stuff later." And
yeah, exactly. So it's like you're not going to take their word for it that they're going to negotiate when you don't have leverage over them. It's like, no, you better just use that leverage. And if that leads to a government shutdown, you kind of just have to go like how you can during it. You kind of just have to take it day to day and see what leverage you can get. And if they stay dug in, it's just who's going to flinch first. And as much as I don't want that to be my side, my question is just like, when does it end? It's like, yeah, I think it just points out the bad thing about this system, where you pointed out the other time where some countries, they just continue doing their past budget and that kind of thing. So we don't have this issue. It's like, why don't we just do that from when Democrats and Republicans came together the last time to pass a budget? So I just think it's kind of just a fucked system that we're dealing with right now, and I wish it wasn't like that. And I wish, like, in a perfect world, you know, yeah, you would want to do a clean funding bill, and then you think that Republicans will actually work with you and actually live up to their word, but they clearly don't. Um,
Yeah, I think it's a little naive the way we deal with it. I mean, it's 2025 and we're still, like I brought up last time, no other first world country has this issue with shutdowns. They all have different plans to keep their people working and keep everything running, and they eventually figure out the plan, but they don't shut it down. But we do have that problem, but it how do I say it shouldn't have come to this, because the common practice is that each side debates and you compromise some things and you make changes and this and that, and then you come up with a bill that works. But Republicans are very much bringing this bill to the table and saying take it or leave it. And then when Democrats say we want to make changes, we're not going to take it, then they say, okay, Democrats shut down the government. Democrats wanted this. This is all, they blame it on the Democrats. We're seeing this from the White House themselves blaming us. And it's, I mean, both sides could definitely be to blame, but you're supposed to work together and make changes. You can't just have all this power, like take it or leave it. That's just immature. And then another thing I wanted to add is, like you said, the memo, they said that the furloughed workers, it won't guarantee back pay. So back pay has been given in every single shutdown we've ever had. And can't remember if I put it in here, but we had a bill that was passed in 2019 that clearly states to give back pay in the event of a shutdown. And I think they're doing this for a few different reasons. So it could be used as a scare tactic to just another way to pressure Democrats to accept their bill. First the shutdown, they went through with it. They're still not budging, so now they're going to say, well, furloughed workers aren't going to get their pay, and just kind of keep stacking things on until they, get some wiggle room.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that it's like a false assumption that they're relying on, where they think that, oh, well, if furloughed workers don't get their pay, and that's like a big story and that sort of thing, they're going to blame Democrats for the shutdown, so they're going to blame them for that. Whereas I just recently saw some polling, and it said that Republicans and Trump are faring worse, rightfully, on the view of the government shutdown. Democrats are viewed to be to blame as well, but not as much as the Republicans, because they are literally in the majority. The buck stops with them. Yes, they would have needed the Democratic senators for cloture, but why didn't they get those votes? It's because of the healthcare cuts and that sort of thing. And I think enough people are realizing that especially with just all the other stuff with them not being able to govern, the economy being so bad, where they kind of look at Trump and they're just like, yeah, like, that this is just not how a government should be run. And I think it's also, so I don't think that them doing that will work. They might try to expressly say, because Democrats shut down the government, we cannot pay you, like send out checks that say that, like the opposite of what Trump did, like with the COVID stimulus checks during, the last year of his term and that sort of thing. Where they're like, oh, sorry, you couldn't get money because of the Democrats, rather than, oh, I gave you money, I'm Trump. But I think it could also be said that this government shutdown, it's very remarkable timing with the special election in Arizona being called, and the last vote needed to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. And not only did he not seat her, Mike Johnson, it was then avoidable shutdown was put in place. So it's like, I'm not saying that the shutdown wouldn't have happened if if he wasn't fearing that. But it seems like that might have been part of it. And that's a Republican trying to stifle what would be a bipartisan effort to release the Epstein files because Republicans are signing on to that. Um, so, yeah, does that answer anything about the back pay? Yeah, that's basically all I think about it. I
Mm,
think it'll be a failure to try to blame it on Democrats.
yeah. I think, unfortunately, Republicans are playing this really well because um, from CNN, I saw that Trump said that he'll soon announce which government programs he intends to permanently eliminate amid the shutdown. So that made me think of uh, they didn't really care if the shutdown happened because if they get their bill, they get the cuts they want, and or I get to keep them. And if the shutdown happens, they can just use that to cut the same programs. And then either way, they blame it on Democrats. So it's kind of a win-win for them, especially just because so many people, they hear that the Democrats caused the shutdown and wanted the shutdown, and that's all they need to believe it and argue people against it when they don't know anything. When misinformation like this is coming straight from the White House, it's really hard to disprove.
Yeah, and I do think that it is, very fucked how, a lot of the propaganda is spread and that sort of thing. But it could be to say that with the government shutdown, it's a lot harder for them to blame the Democrats when they're not in power. And I find this to be kind of a similar thing where Democrats tried to harness the Roe v. Wade being overturned, and that was overturned by the right wing Supreme Court, but that was during Biden and the Democrats and that sort of thing. So that didn't necessarily translate to that much support for Democrats, especially in 2024. Maybe in 2022 it did. Well, there's plenty of people who blamed the Republicans and stuff when Roe v. Wade was overturned, but because that was during a Democrats administration, Democrats in Congress, they didn't really blame them. So maybe even if you could argue the Democrats caused this because Trump and the Republicans are at the helm and that sort of thing, they are just the ones who are more likely to be blamed, especially with everything else bad that's been said about them and how people already think badly about Trump and that sort of thing. Whereas now that Biden and Harris and them are gone, Democrats are a little bit more of a blank slate right now, I think. Yeah, you have Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, but a lot of people don't even know their names. And those who do think that they should be thrown out of their jobs. But I don't want that to translate to not voting Democrat at all, because you just need to vote for the right Democrats to unseat them, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's not clearly one administration or one party, I find people tend to blame the incumbent party. Even when you saw that was kind of lessened, like with Biden in 2022, with like Roe v. Wade being overturned, yeah, that blunted it, but we still lost the House in 2022. We lost the congressional popular vote because we lost the American people and the approval of them. Biden did, and the Democrats. And now we see the same thing with Trump, and the shutdown is just another part of that. So I really hope it's just crumbles down, his approval and the approval of Republicans to the point where we just have a giant blue wave in 2026. I think that's just what we need to do. And if we don't have that, I fear travesty. Like if we don't win back the House, like we're done. And also that's also because if we don't win back the House, that also says something, because even in 2022, where I think they won the congressional popular vote by like 1 point something percent, and they still won. It's like Democrats only have to flip like a few seats just to win. So if we don't win, it was probably rigged. I'm not going to say that for sure because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but yeah, the only way I think that we could see that we don't have a Democratic Congress after 2026 is election rigging, period.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you just look at the approval ratings, look what the people are really saying. Trump likes to boast about how his approval rating has gone up, and something like 50% of Americans approve of his presidency, which is just an absolute lie. You can go and look up the numbers yourself. It just goes lower and lower every month of his presidency. And if something like that were to happen and they win again in 2026, places where they obviously shouldn't have, and people will speak up, and it'll be pretty obvious. But we got a little bit of time till then, and especially till the next presidential election, which we'll see how that goes. It's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I mean, so next, if we're done on that, I kind of wanted to talk about troop deployments to Chicago and Portland. So, and yes, we're talking about this again because it's still happening. Trump authorized 300 National Guard troops to be deployed to Chicago. In Oregon, a judge temporarily blocked deployment of National Guard troops to Portland, ruling that there wasn't sufficient justification for military action and domestic law enforcement. Trump has floated invoking the Insurrection Act, a law that would allow him to deploy military forces domestically under certain circumstances as justification. Illinois has sued to block the department in Chicago, calling it unconstitutional. The deployments occur in the context of immigration enforcement operations like ICE's Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago and protests around ICE facilities. So, once again, what are the constitutional limits of deploying federal troops domestically? When does it cross the line? Obviously, this is just to own the libs. This is just to have a spectacle. This isn't actually about solving crime or anything. That's why all you ever see these fucking military people do is going after protesters and reporters and throwing them on the ground and brutalizing them, because that's what their job is. These ICE agents, and a lot of the time, the National Guard that gets placed there are not in the right headset, and they just are looking for violence, it seems like. And it's just so frustrating that we're at this moment where we have a president deploying the military against U.S. citizens just because he doesn't like them. And he said it on air. He said, "I hate them." He said he hates his opponents. So he just wants to have them disappeared like he does all the immigrants. He wants that to happen to homegrowns, he literally said. So he sends these people into cities to rile them up, to show that he's boss, because he has this huge ego. And it's disgusting. We shouldn't have to deal with the military when it's absolutely not necessary, when it's literally for his ego. It's like, it's as if there's many military parades for his ego, except it's not a parade. It's antagonistic and trying to cause a rise out of people.
Yeah, I mean, this is just blatantly illegal and unconstitutional. And there was an order issued by U.S. District Judge Karen Immergert, who was, funny enough, appointed by President Trump. And this is a temporary restraining order that prohibits the deployment of National Guard troops to Portland. This also includes some, I think, California and Idaho, or a couple other states, not just Oregon. So that's good that this went through. And this is in effect until at least October 19th, until further hearings. So we'll see what happens after that. But I'm glad we were able to actually put a stop to it. And so my aunt lives in Portland, and she was driving around downtown, and she said there were some very small protests outside certain facilities. They were peaceful, very small, not a lot of commotion, no chaos, and that these troops are just, bottom line, not needed. And my brother, he was asking me, there obviously is a problem in Portland. We talked about that last time. Why is it such a bad thing that these troops are being deployed, to keep people safe or bring the crime down? Well, there is a problem. That's a fact, but this is overstepping it way, way too far. This is, for this kind of solution, would be as if the city was literally burning down, and it was a full anarchy, and which is what Trump is calling it. And that's why the judge put that restraining order, because she said that it's simply not bad enough to justify, this amount of federal overreach. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at Portland, so they have a crime reduction plan for 2025, and it's just kind of coming up with new ways to combat crime. And it says that violent crime overall is down 17% in the last half of 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. And also homicides dropped from 35 to 17, roughly a 51% decrease. So Portland knows they have a problem and they're handling it, right? They're doing the best they can, and we do not need the government to come in and try and fix this for us, especially in such a outrageous way. Portland's dealing with it. They have it covered. Trump really does not care about the people. He doesn't care about keeping them safe or bringing the crime down. He's just targeting blue states and blue cities, and this is just part of his authoritarian agenda. And so his reasoning in doing this is that authoritarian leaders often seek to undermine local or regional independence, asserting that only the national executive can restore order. So that's what he's doing. He's saying that you have all these problems and only I can solve it. I'm the only person that can help you. And then deploying the military towards protest or political unrest crosses a major democratic norm. You have people in peaceful protest speaking up against the government that they don't agree with. That's a huge part of America, that you can speak out against your government. Yeah. And just coming in and beating up the protesters. It's just, stomping on his opposition and trying to stop those voices that are speaking out against him.
Yeah, and that's all they do. They literally come and just beat up people and bully people, and same goes for ICE and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, if they think that deploying the military like this is necessary, what do they even think the military is doing? They're doing nothing but inciting chaos and literally attacking people who are not being violent. It's not even like it was some third world country and they're trying to rebuild or anything. They're not rebuilding anything because it's already built. It's not some third world country because it's America. They go in there and it's not like they don't have a government or something. It's all literally built, and there's a reason why they're just standing around. If they were needed, they wouldn't just be standing around doing nothing, except for when there's some peaceful protester, usually a small woman that needs to be thrown to the ground. They have a serious knack for doing that, it seems.
Yeah. And when it comes to excessive force, I did a little bit of research on ICE agents more than National Guard. It's just unreal. You get, people obviously question it, and they have a right to, because the left is saying that they're kidnapping people off the street, they're trying to deport U.S. citizens, and you think, oh, that's ridiculous, that's too far. But go ahead and look it up for yourself. That's exactly what it is. I'll just read some things here. So this is all in 2025, so this is all recent. So a man in Alabama says he was detained twice by ICE agents in 2025, even though he presented a real ID both times and repeatedly asserted his citizenship. He filed a lawsuit alleging constitutional violations. We'll see where that goes. And then in Utah, since January of this year, ICE has arrested over 1,400 people. And up to 1/3 were non-criminals. So the GOP is painting this picture, and ICE and DHS and all that they're going after murderers and pedophiles and rapists and these just terrible people. And that is, obviously there's some of those, but for the majority, that's not true at all. They paint this picture that they're taking these terrible people off the street, but it's just people that are, have no criminal record. They're working, they have families. Another person, from Venezuela, after being granted asylum, he was kept in ICE detention for 63 extra days beyond the judge's ruling. He had no criminal charges either. And then in 1 month, nearly 1,500 Massachusetts residents were arrested in large-scale immigration raids. Almost half of those detained reportedly had no criminal record. So, again, just to reemphasize my point that these are just normal people they're not criminals. They're not terrible. Like they're painting this picture. I was at the gym the other day, and they had an ICE advertisement to join ICE on the TV, and it literally said in big bold letters, "You're going to catch criminals, murderers, pedophiles." Like they literally tell that to the public, join ICE and join this great cause, and that is not what it is, not at all.
When you say how people without a criminal record, did they still enter the country illegally? But just other than that, they don't have a criminal record?
Yeah, so some of them did, and some of them, it's all kind of up in the air because if you entered illegally, they have to put out a warrant for your deportation, and you can what's it called when you want to argue against the warrant?
Fight it in court?
Yeah, you can do that, which takes a while. So an example here is this was in Massachusetts, and so a man, he has a wife and 3 kids in the backseat. They're in their car after church, and ICE agents surrounded the car. They told him, demanded he get out. They're going to arrest him. They did not show a warrant or identification. They just shouted commands to get out. The man and his wife kept asking for a warrant identification. They didn't give it, which by law, they are supposed to give identification. So the masks, they're actually allowed to wear masks, but they have to respond. They have to identify themselves if asked, which I've seen many videos, people demanding their names, and they just say nothing. So that's illegal. And so anyways, they surrounded the car. He's not listening, not being violent or anything, but he wasn't listening. So he pulled out a handgun, and put it against the window, and was yelling at him to get out. Still didn't get out. There's kids in the back seat. He pulled his gun for no reason. Then they smashed the window, ripped the father out of the car, throw him to the ground, handcuff him. Children are crying. No one knows what's going on. And so they say that he had a warrant out for his deportation, and his attorney said that disputes the legitimacy of that order, saying he never received proper notice and had been pursuing case review with an immigration lawyer. So he had no criminal record. There is some, iffy gray area about his deportation warrant, but the excessive force is so extreme, and there's so many examples of this exact same thing. They're just smashing car windows, ripping people out, and arresting them. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the brazen, just violence and cruelty that we see these ICE agents and sometimes the National Guard engage in is just absolutely disgusting. And I think that why would they be concerned about being held to account with who's in office right now? Trump would basically move hell on earth to basically protect an ICE agent basically no matter what they do. So I don't see why they would be scared of acting this way if President Trump is in power.
I would assume they're told not to.
Yeah, they're probably told just don't care about illegal consequences because we're going to handle all of that, and you're not going to go behind bars. Like, look at the January 6th insurrectionists, where at first that kind of shocked even some MAGA. They weren't sure that he would just blanket pardon literally all of them, even the ones that committed violence and didn't just break into the Capitol. But no, he pardoned all of them. So, I mean, if you're an ICE agent, I see why they think they can do whatever they want, because legally it's almost as if they can. So, and that's the unfortunate reality we have in this system. And with the pardon system in general, I mean, that kind of makes you think, I'm glad that some people were pardoned under Biden. I'm pretty sure Trump even might have pardoned some people who probably deserved it. And so I'm not necessarily against that power to begin with, but I think that it kind of makes it more dangerous for people who are allies to Trump, all the way down to ICE agents, but all the way up to in his administration. Like, I think Tom Homan is his name. He's like a top, he's the border czar, actually. There was an investigation under Biden, basically, where they were going to hand him, I think it was $50,000 in exchange for government contracts when he would work under the incoming Trump administration. And he took the money, and they basically made the investigation go away once Trump got into power. Um, and you know, it just goes to show that they really don't care, and they don't have any reason to care, because Trump's just going to make it all go away. And everything is just through the lens of Trump. That's kind of how I look at it. Everyone who you think is guilty and should be in jail, if Trump has anything to do with them or thinks they shouldn't be guilty, nope, they're not in jail. Oh, Trump got convicted of 34 counts of felonies. Oh, well, he should be in jail, but he's not, because they just dropped all the charges because, you know, they want to kiss his ass and they're scared of him. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just going back to these ICE agents, I mean, they people genuinely think they're getting kidnapped, and they have no idea who these people are. They have masks. I saw one video where a guy didn't even have a shirt on. He just had a bulletproof vest. I mean, how do you see that and you think this guy's for real? Of course you're going to fight back and demand for identification. They don't give it, so then you think even more that it's, you know, not legal. Like, it's ridiculous. I just wanted to touch on briefly the article I sent you that was here at Weber. I don't know if you got the chance to look at it, but this was especially meaningful to me because it's happening. You know, you hear about censorship and all that happening to Jimmy Kimmel and these people who you don't have any personal relationship to. You think you can say whatever you want, and nothing's going to happen. But yeah, so Weber State, they put out an article, and the title is Weber State Censors Conference on Censorship. And you think, oh, that's an exaggeration, but that's exactly what it is. So the conference was going to be later this month, and it was going to talk about censorship in America, how important it is. It was going to be put on by some local guys and professors here at the university. And basically, they would have had to censor themselves for the conference so much that the professor said he it's not ethically right. He can't give the conference anymore. He's going to have to cancel it because he would have to censor himself on a conference about censorship. And this goes back to the House Bill 261, and that was passed in June of last year by the Utah Congress, and that prohibits higher education from maintaining or operating offices related to DEI. So that's a very general term, but they determined that with this bill in place, with this law, they wouldn't be able to touch on anything DEI. One professor said he was told he couldn't talk about politics on a conference on censorship, which obviously that's like they're directly tied. You can't do one without the other. So they cancel it. I mean, it's ridiculous. I can't believe it happened here, but pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I didn't really know all the details like that, and that must especially be because it was an event. Do you know who was throwing the event? Well, no. It almost had to be like through the actual school, because that's why we get allowed. I don't know what word I'm looking for there. We're allowed to, reserve space like this, reserve rooms, and do all that because we're the WSU Democrats. So, and just like the WSU Republicans and that sort of thing, but they can't censor anything we have to say because we're a student-led organization and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I was by the school.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I couldn't imagine if I was about to run an event and they were saying that to me, I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm not doing the event either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I totally understand why he did that. It's a shame that they passed that bill to literally make everything so milquetoast, to not talking about things that matter and not supporting communities and not literally having safe spaces for people who need one, which is why DEI existed in the first place, which also, by the way, affects people with disabilities. I know a lot of racists and Trump supporters like to, deny that being disabled is actually part of DEI, and DEI has extraordinarily benefited people in the disabled community. So, yeah, it's just that just needs to be repealed, the HB 261, because it's just absolutely disgusting, taking away safe spaces and communities for people who need it, literally censoring information. And it goes to show that the Republican Party is at least now it's the party being anti-free speech, basically. We saw
Which
that with Jimmy
yeah,
Kimmel.
I think that's so ironic because leading up to the election, he was really harping on Harris for being pro censorship, and they're going to control what you say, and they're going to censor everything. I remember he really, went through with that point, and then he's doing more censorship than she ever would have come close to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to know also they were like screaming and crying after the 2020 election because the Biden campaign and Hunter Biden had gone on Twitter and they requested for literal revenge porn of Hunter Biden, like after he had this whole like cocaine induced
Yeah.
fiasco, and they had pictures of that. They were saying that, and they were making this huge deal about it, like this is corrupt government intervention because the Biden campaign, they weren't even in office yet, literally, and requested that Twitter take those images down. Yet, literally, Elon Musk did the same thing during the 2024 election with the bad story about JD Vance. And now they're trying to take away all of the late night hosts just because they talk shit on Trump, and they're acting like that's not censorship and that's not government intervention and government censorship. It just makes absolutely no sense. And then again, same with the military. It's like the Republican Party has flipped on its head. Well, I feel like it has been this way for a while, at least since Reagan, where they claim to be the party of small government when they're really not. It's like that's another example how you see with the troops and that sort of thing, deploying them into military or deploying them into the cities. Like if Obama did that, you'd see the Republicans all act like that goes against their basic, common, uh, qualm that they have with Democrats that they, poke their nose where it shouldn't. Yet here he is deploying the National Guard to cities that don't even request it, um, and it's just absolute fascism and is in inflicting policies that affect what we can see and read and hear, like the censorship event. That's absolutely ridiculous. That should not have happened.
Yeah, I mean, the Constitution was written so that the federal government never gains too much power, and the states always have their power, which compared to a lot of countries, our federal government is pretty weak. And I think that's a good thing, that it just comes down to the people, the citizens of the country can vote for and pass what they want, and they actually have a say. And deploying troops just goes against the state sovereignty and just really harms that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything else you'd like to bring up?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, well, then I think that should be it for the WSU Democrats podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for Vaughn for contributing. And I hope you guys have a nice day or night, everybody. See you later.